Lakeburg Legacies. I'm sure a lot of you don't even know Lakeburg Legacy, also especially that it's a French game. So to put it simply, it's a management game where you play some kind of Cupid, whose goal is to develop their village. To do this, you will assign villagers to professions in which they will contribute the most to the village growth. So the idea is to create descendants with an interesting DNA heritage for the village, while also fostering love and joy within the households you marry. If you like indie game, you probably heard about the French studio who made it, Ishtar Games. But surely for a more popular title than Lakeburg Legacies. If I mention Dead in Bermuda, or more recently Dead in Vinland, big name in the indie video game industry that deserve reviews as well. But recently the studio has set new goals by releasing games that are completely different from their earlier successes in terms of style, genre and atmosphere. Is this a good or bad idea? Is it really up for debate? Personally, I'm for renewal, innovation, or the never before seen. But did Lakeburg Legacy really succeed in its risk-taking? Let's start with the elephant in the room. And many of you probably saw it coming because Lakeburg Legacies is still a newcomer in the gaming sphere. While it did complete its development precisely on July 20th, this game, like a lot of recent games after their release, was full of flaws. I won't be too harsh, considering it's an independent game with a smaller budget and limited resources. But I think it's still important to note that in roughly 17 hours of gameplay, I experienced four complete game crashes, forcing me to restart and lose like 30 minutes of progress. This is due to the lack of quick save that would have been nice to have while waiting for the bug to be patched. I see some of you blaming my setup, but believe me, it's not a little game like this one that's supposed to push my PC to its limit. This inconvenience put aside, there are relatively few in-game bugs that have stalled my advancement. Some lag when using the maximum speed time, but nothing too severe. If it continued to receive updates in a few months, it should run completely smoothly, and we won't even be discussing these issues anymore. Now that I've got that off my chest, let's talk about what really matters. And for a management game, in my opinion, the focus should be on the gameplay. You think I'm weird with my hands? No? It's fine. You begin by configuring your game, starting with selecting the game's duration, while being mindful because the days pass relatively quickly. Then you set the difficulty by adjusting the transaction and harvest sliders, so to speak. I'll explain it later, but to me the systems are still badly balanced. Then, once starting, you're bombarded with information that the tutorial gives you. So you try to somewhat understand the effects of your action on the game and the potential consequences. Here's something I can tell you after more than 15 hours of playing, that I didn't quite grasp at the beginning. The game has too many data points and variables that seem unnecessary, or at least their impact is not significant enough to make you want to fully engage with them. Let me explain. Without a clearer objective than making your village prosper and achieving a maximum final score, you have to proceed in two ways. The first step involves having the villagers of your village work to make it prosper. By working, they will produce sellable materials or ones that are useful for constructing new buildings. In some establishments, they will also increase the score called prestige, which you count at the end of the game or can act for the greater good of the community by healing or protecting its villagers. In the second part, you have a marriage and inheritance aspect, meaning you have to form happy couples, at least according to the Steam store page. This couple can then have or adopt children to continue their lineage and keep the village thriving. So, as you've understood, there are two systems, village management and marriage, trying to work together but not quite succeeding, as one always seems to take precedence over the other. Indeed, during my second game, I realized that my lack of development came from the fact that I've never had enough villagers in my village, resulting in not enough resources to construct new buildings or available workers for new jobs. The logical solution the game proposed me was easier to procreate and therefore raise and educate children in the hope that they would eventually fill the workforce gaps in a certain village buildings. The problem is that the time required for the education and training of each child is too long. And this long-term investment doesn't allow me to reap the rewards of my effort quickly enough. Moreover, current workers age and become more susceptible to dying of old age or having accidents. So, I needed a second solution to develop my village on a more solid basis. This is where the second solution comes into play, one that the game didn't emphasize on as much. It involves hiring foreigners directly. The problem is that this option is only available a certain number of times and is financially costly, simply because the price increases drastically with each new acquisition. So, foreigners are not a viable long-term resource for the prosperity of my village. At best, they are a crutch I can lean on, in case of early death or the need for a quick and occasional population boost. That's when I had to put my thinking cap on to solve this population shortage problem, especially since the game, which had been so eager to bombard me with solutions since the beginning, decided to stay silent. I had to find a more advantageous solution on my own, and here's my discovery. If I marry my inhabitants to people who fulfill the village's needs, rather than their soulmates or good matches, my development will be more optimal, because every person joining the village is now essential. Now, from the strategy of quick and arranged marriages, there is an extremely exploitable bonus point that essentially breaks the game. If the formed couple is not compatible, they can still have children, but nothing prevents them from divorcing. And since I don't receive any penalties with each divorce, I keep the children and both members of the couple, allowing me to multiply my population more easily. How, you might ask? Well, because if they divorce, I have 2 singles available for remarriage, thus providing me with more workers. And if the new remarriages turn out to be bad, leading to new divorces, etc, etc, etc. You get the picture. I think that the issue comes from the fact that the game don't really define its objectives from the start. It was clear to me that to achieve a maximum score, I must make the prestige of my village prosper. But there is a grey area concerning this Cupid simulation. Should I marry couple to make them happy, or for the prosperity of the village? And it's because the game struggles to find the balance between these two systems that it loses in quality. Let's continue with my example. After all of these divorces and marriages, I end up with a population much higher than the game should accept. I've built all the houses, and there is no more available jobs. Yet, the game doesn't punish me when there is an employment because, to be honest, there aren't really any poor people. Class division is based on occupation and what it represents, with nobles, artisans, and peasants. However, it would have been interesting to add vagabonds, for example, or a currency system within household that could influence the poverty status of the family. In the end, I have a surplus of population, not enough work for everyone, perhaps not enough houses if I had continued longer, and nothing punishes me. I end up like all of the smiths of the villages I come from, by marrying my villagers together. Remember when I talk about the abundance of data and variables to the point where it becomes pointless? Well, the perfect example of its failure is here. There's actually a genetics and teaching system. Your characters can have personality traits influenced by their DNA, or that they will copy as they grow up under a mentor you assign to them. After a few minutes of playing, I completely abandoned this feature, not because it's uninteresting, but because it's poorly introduced. And more importantly, the impact is not significant enough. So in the end, since we don't really need it, we simply don't use it. The problem with this DNA system is most likely related to the narrative, which is too passive for what the studio attempted to do. Each of your characters' traits influences their work abilities and relationships. Stories are supposed to develop between characters, within the village, at workplaces, or even within households. However, everything is pushed into the background, and you quickly forget who is who. You only see the data, those little stars that need to be filled in for a character to be good enough at their job. When I see one of my characters die, why am I more bothered by the need to replace them at their workplace than by the actual death of a unique character? Simply because the characters aren't unique. They're just combinations of traits and more or less random statistics, experiencing events that are barely described, and we stop paying attention after the third occurrence. I would have liked Lakeburg Legacies to make me develop a small village. I would have liked to pay attention to its villagers, be curious enough to invite myself into their private lives, watch them evolve, grow, discover, argue to better reconcile, and even see them die. I wanted to feel that deep down I had taken a unique element from this small ecosystem, something that would change the neighborhood's dynamics at least a bit. But no, look at this death. How cold it is, devoid of all feelings. A word for their family? Who is their family? A face? A name at best? Not even a role. A tiny biography. Not even for the very first villager. Nope. Another character takes their place, and we forgot all about them. There are nothing but numbers, an additional means to make a profit. A tiny cog in the development machine. I'm telling you this for the first time, but myself, I'm an aspiring narrative designer. And with my humble experience, it's very easy to see where the game's problem come from. Indeed, it could be better optimized. The game systems are clumsy and lack clear objectives. But the worst part is the intentionality. The lack of purpose goes beyond the in-game aspects. It's felt even within the development team. What did you want to achieve? What did you want to say? I mentioned earlier that the game drowns in data and variables. But it's even worse. Now, I realize it's drowning in its own wheel. I'd always be the first one to add elements, mechanics, or lore to my projects. I'm always the first to make things more complex to try to achieve that substance that makes art so subtle. While some say that too much is the enemy of good, I don't necessarily agree. But surely, it's better to have something simple that is good and effective than something complex that becomes mediocre. It aches my heart to play Lakeburg Legacies, because after great games like Dead in Bermuda or Dead in Vinland, I expected more. It's a game that risks being unmemorable. It could have been like this, but they choose to release it when it was still here. I don't know who is currently working at the studio, and I don't know the reason for this lack of polish, but please rebalance your game and take a clear direction on what your players are supposed to experience in your title. And here's my best advice. Bring someone in to manage this lacking narrative. Bring together narrative and game designers so that within the mechanics themselves, the decisions can impact the village, the individuals, and most importantly, the way of playing the game. Believe me, there are plenty of talented and motivated people who want to work in narrative design. And I know how it can be hard for a small studio to hire them, but it's so disappointed to see that you were so close to make a truly amazing and memorable game. So there you have it, my review of the game. I hope you enjoyed this video. It wasn't really easy to make this video after Baldur's Gate 3, to go from a popular RPG to an obscure management game. But well, it's important for me to share my love for video game on this channel, no matter the genre. I took a risk, and I would be more than surprised to see YouTube support me in this kind of conditions. In any case, it's not a big deal. I'll get back on track with a video with a broader audience. If you enjoyed this little review, please let me know in the comments. And share the video, this really helps me a lot. You can also leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. See you soon!